It's time to shift our attention to the Kansas City Chiefs, and what better way than to get into a crossover. Locked On Chiefs joins us to talk biggest stories and keys to victory in the Bengals' visit to Arrowhead in Week 2.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Crossover Thursday, and we're brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our code. It's all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm excited about this because it's my favorite part of the season when we get to actually talk to hosts that we like to go against. The teams are in a grudge. So are we. It's nice to see you, James. Jake, we're going to get back to it. Make sure that you like, sub, and hit the bell here on both channels all the time, everywhere, because we are free on every platform you can think of, and maybe some I haven't even considered yet, every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And then get onto Spotify, Apple, the whole 9 yards. We appreciate you making us your first listen. Make another Locked On show. Maybe the other show from the one you're watching right now, your next listen. We have a ton for you. We are going to go through everything that is key to this game, some predictions, some three keys. We're coming up later in the show. We're going to start second with the Chiefs and the biggest storyline for them, but we get down to it as the away team is coming in. So, James, what's the biggest story in Cincinnati this week?
The biggest story in Cincinnati is, can the Bengals somehow, some way avoid a third straight 0-2 start? They started 0-2 in 2022, started 0-2 in 23, and I don't think anyone really had them 0-1 outside of, well, probably no one. Let's be honest here. No one had them losing to the Patriots last week. They lost to the Patriots. Everyone knew when the schedule came out that this was going to be a tough game week 2, and now they're staring at, and their backs are against the wall of potentially starting 0-2 for a third straight year. So as much as we can talk about Jamar Chase and all the contract stuff that went on, I think that the biggest story is the Bengals record. And then tied with that would be Joe Burrow and what Joe Burrow is, how his wrist is feeling, how he performed week 1, how he will potentially perform week 2. And so, yeah, I think those go hand in hand, of course, wrist and wrist, however you want to say it. But that's what we're talking about here in Cincinnati.
I like the concept. I have to think that the wrist is probably from us on the other side. We have to enjoy when it's really a question mark. There's always question marks about every team, but when we play so early in the season, having something that's so prescient on everything you can do on offense, especially with some of our questions as well, I think that makes it more and more difficult to really predict predictably, which we're going to try to do later, folks. So hang in here for that. So if that's the offense, what's the defense look like, Jake?
Yeah, we're all wringing hands over Joe Burrow's wrist. Meanwhile, he's telling people that his wrist is fine. It's not stopping him from making any throws. That was a big point he made on Wednesday. And some people remain skeptical. But on the defensive side of the ball, it comes down to tackling. This defense was in position for the better part of the game. They had, I think, the highest pressure rate I saw in week 1 against a very poor offensive line that New England was throwing out there. But they only had 1 sack. They didn't convert those pressures into sacks. Jacoby Brissett instead had 3 scrambles for first downs. And turns out Patrick Mahomes is a little bit better in the pocket than Jacoby Brissett. Not to take anything away from Brissett. I thought he played a really good game in terms of pocket management, but I don't think anyone is comparing him to Mahomes in that category. So there's containing and tackling the quarterback when you get pressure on the one hand, and then on the other, and perhaps more importantly, is force Patrick Mahomes to actually have to do something to beat you. And I know that sounds crazy. It sounds like Roquan Smith going into week 1. But the way the Bengals tackled against the Patriots in the run game, Patrick Mahomes might not have to do anything if they can't tackle the running backs for the Chiefs the way they couldn't tackle Ramondre Stevenson in week 1 with 118 of his 120 rushing yards coming after contact, whether that's bad angles or guys bouncing off of Stevenson. The Bengals' run D was exposed in a way that we didn't expect. We thought it was going to be a problem with the defensive interior. Instead, it was an issue with tackling from linebackers, guys that were in the right place and couldn't make plays, or the same issue with defensive backs. So to me, on the defensive side of the ball, it's the basics. Can they tackle this week?
Well, the thing that sticks out to me is you're going up against Isaiah Pacheco this week when you start talking about tackling and the way he runs, the way how hard he runs is really going to be a big thing. So from going from trying to tackle Ramondre Stevenson to tackling Isaiah Pacheco, I think is going to be sticking out. James, you had a story, actually. I have to just ask a quick question on this. Do you think Jamar Chase's contract issue is going to play into Cincinnati's season? Or do you think it's a done deal at this point? Obviously, he's probably not going to get paid this year, but do you think it's going to hang over them, is I guess really where I'm going?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And no, I do think it's a big reason. It played a factor in why they lost to the Patriots. Not the only factor. About 50,000 things went wrong. But yeah, I mean, when Joe Burrow finds out that you're playing on that Sunday morning before you play, that was a factor. That was a distraction. I don't think either side is expecting something to come together now. And so I assume Jamar, as much as he can, has moved on and is focusing on the Chiefs. And in this day and age, I feel like that players can move on pretty quickly. Will it come back up? Potentially, but I do think from a football standpoint, he can focus on that and get ready for the Chiefs on Sunday.
I think focus is going to be the biggest challenge for both these teams on both sides of the ball. Not hard to get motivated, right? The motivation is there. It's making sure that you channel that in the right direction, especially when you're overcoming some early season problems, adjustments, that kind of thing. Jake, at the end of the day, do you feel like the distractions that have been going on this week in Cincinnati are enough that they can refocus and be ready for Kansas City?
I think that if there's going to be a game that will coalesce your team's collective focus early in the season, it's playing your number one rival in the AFC over the last few years. If they can't get up and get focused for this game, then I don't know what early season game would achieve that for the Cincinnati Bengals, especially coming off a very disappointing loss. And look, week one has not been predictive for the Cincinnati Bengals the last few years, even going back to 2021. There have been early season struggles for this team, whether it's week one or week two. I think I saw a stat that Zach Taylor's 0-5 in week two in his career. Maybe that continues this week. Maybe not. We'll see. I mean, they got to play the game on Sunday, right? It was not an inspiring effort, though, in week one. If you don't see a bounce back this week, then those doubts just grow louder for the Bengals in Cincinnati. I can't imagine that focus will be an issue, though, going into this game, despite some of the things going on around the team. A bigger issue will be who's actually healthy for these teams, as T. Higgins remains on the rehab field, not practicing. Will be perhaps a little bit of a surprise if he gets back into the swing of things in time to play in this game. The Bengals had a number of other players who weren't practicing on Wednesday. We haven't seen the full injury report yet to know what those designations are as of the time of recording, but those will be questions the Bengals have to answer this week, I hope, more than questions about focus and whether or not they're ready to play football on Sunday against this opponent after what happened to them in week one.
So just to be clear, you don't think T. Higgins does play this week?
I'd be surprised right now. James, would you agree with that?
Yeah, he didn't practice on Wednesday, and the vibes I got last week were that he would probably be out for a little bit. So, no, I don't anticipate it. Okay. Could it change? Maybe, but I would be surprised if we see him out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just was curious because you guys know a lot more than we do when it comes to the Cincinnati players. That's what we're here for. So thank you very much.
Storylines are storylines, but getting players back makes a difference on the field. What's going on in Kansas City? That's coming up next.
Football is finally back. We're up to week two. It's time to order your favorite game day food, snacks, and drinks on DoorDash without missing a play. Maybe you showed up to a watch party. You're getting ready to watch with your friends and you forgot to bring your contribution to the snack table. Well, DoorDash has you covered, and through DoorDash, you can get your snack of choice delivered. Maybe you need some Cincinnati chili on the spot. Well, DoorDash is there for you. And not only that, we can save you 50% off your order right now, up to a $10 value. All you have to do is use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to that $10 value when you spend $15 on your first order. That's a limited time offer. Terms apply, and the promo isn't valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash is your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol is only available in selected markets.
Today's show is brought to you by Hims. Men, when we leave the house, it's phone, wallet, keys. How's my hair look? But if you're experiencing hair loss, you may not be so confident when you step outside the door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with Hims. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. They make treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted treatment options and clinically proven ingredients that regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedonnfl. That's hims.com/lockedonnfl, hims.com/lockedonnfl for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/lockedonnfl. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Let's keep things rolling on a Bengals Chiefs crossover. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought I was going to toss to you here. That's the beauty of the crossover, is we can stomp on each other's heads a little bit. Let's get to the Chiefs, though. I'll be going to Kansas City. Excited about it because it's September and not December or January, when the wind is just going to cut through me as I walk through that parking lot to Arrowhead. But what's the biggest storyline going into this one for the Chiefs?
For me,
it comes down to one thing.
Go ahead, Ryan.
It comes down to the one thing that you're looking for right now. For me, I want to know if Hollywood Brown's going to be back. You want to add that mix to the offense of what looked pretty potent to begin with in the passing game with Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy making a debut as a rookie. I'm looking forward to seeing, can they take it up another notch? There's going to be a lot of aspects to how they choose to attack the defense that I think has probably had their number the most over the last few seasons. So having that extra arrow in your quiver, so to speak, I think is going to help out in Arrowhead.
How do the Chiefs keep getting Rashid Rice on linebackers? I know it was week 1 and it was the Ravens, and the Ravens had a big brain drain on the defensive side of the ball and the coaching staff, but is that something you think is a reliable weapon in Andy Reid's toolkit this year? Is that something that you think he'll be able to reproduce on a week-to-week basis?
I wouldn't say that they're going to get him on linebackers every week. I would say that I think Rashid Rice is going to have a bigger part in the offense than he did at any point last year, just because I think that he's grown so much as a player and he's playing 80% of the snaps right now. I think that he's evolved as a receiver a little bit this offseason, and he's continued to get better in several different phases, including the running game, which is important because I do think that Kansas City is going to be looking to run the ball. I don't know so much in this game. It's really going to depend on how the Bengals decide that they want to try to defend them. If they put it too deep, then maybe they're going to run Pacheco more, and that becomes more of an issue with blocking. But I do think Rice is going to have a big game or a big season this year. I'm curious to see how different teams try to attack this Chiefs offense, especially when a guy like Hollywood Brown does come back.
What do you think the offensive identity would be right now for the Chiefs early in this season, where last year the defense did a bigger portion than we're used to in Patrick Mahomes teams in terms of the Chiefs winning games? Coming into this year, we've only seen the Chiefs once. So for Cincinnati fans who are wondering what to expect from an identity perspective with the Chiefs, how would you characterize that, Ryan?
I'd really call them an octopus right now because they've taken their biggest weakness, the passing game, and really shored up that part of it. You feel like you can run better with Isaiah Pacheco. You feel like, yes, you lost L'Jarius Sneed, but the vast majority of a very good defense is back. You got to filter in some new players. So whatever they have to morph into right now, whatever tentacle has to reach out and try to wrap around Joe Burrow's throat, they're going to throw it at him. And I think they have the options to get it done.
Xavier Worthy, what has he brought? Obviously, he had 2 touchdowns. All the fantasy football listeners pay attention to that. One on a broken play, but he's dynamic. Zach Taylor praised him on Wednesday, saying that he's clearly a football player that happens to be fast, not a fast guy that's trying to play football. And we've heard that about guys over the years. Is what has he brought to this team, and how big of a threat is he that the Bengals need to be aware of?
I think he's going to be a huge threat. I think it's going to continue to grow as the season goes on, but I think the most encouraging thing to me is I think he played 70 to 75% of the passing snaps against the Ravens. When you go back and you look at what Rashid Rice did as a rookie, he was closer to 25% week one. So to me, looking at that aspect of it, it looks like Worthy is a lot further along in his development, and the Chiefs are going to use him a lot more than they used Rashid Rice as a rookie. And then you look at, some of his comments today. He talked about, being able to read the defense and understanding things. And yeah, he played great against the Ravens, so I don't want to throw that away. But if you go back to the Lions game in preseason, one of the things that stood out to me was he read the defense. He knew he had an option route on that big third down play. He knew exactly what the defense was doing, and he found the spot in the zone. And for a rookie to be able to do that, that's a very impressive one. And it shows how much he is a student of the game and loves playing this game, because he's learning and he's buying into the playbook and learning things quickly. And I think that's huge. And James, you make a great point. I mean, he is a speed guy, but the other part of it that he doesn't get credit for is, his catch radius is pretty good. He can track the ball very well, which is huge with his speed. And I think that that's going to be something that they're going to take advantage of this year.
So a lot to say about the Chiefs offense always is. They've added a speed element at the receiver position that they haven't had since Tyreek Hill's departure. Obviously, Kelce's still there. Rashid Rice is taking a step in his second year. Mahomes is still Mahomes. There are questions at the tackles, and we'll talk about those, I think, when we talk about some of the keys to the game. At least it seems to me there are questions at the tackles for the Chiefs. But let's shift and talk about the defense for a bit before we get there. And tell me what's going on early. Obviously, Chris Jones and Trent McDuffie seem to be the two cornerstones, at least from the outside looking in. What's the level of play for this Chiefs defense this year? Are you expecting a repeat performance of that elite tier of defense, or what's the feeling in Kansas City about that defense, Ryan?
I think really you're hoping to get back to that point, but that's going to take several players behind Trent McDuffie to make some progress in their development paths. I really think when it's all said and done, they're going to see a slight fall off there. I don't think it's going to be dramatic, but I do feel like there's enough guys in the pipeline that you're going to be able to sustain attrition through the season, be able to continue to work on, especially your physicality at the corner spot, which they do want to predicate their games on. I do think they've done a very good job in the front office in bringing guys that fit their style, and I think that's going to help. What I am more concerned about, to tell you the truth, is to continue the seafood aspect of it. If it's the offense is an octopus, it's a jellyfish on the defensive front. There's a lot of pressure produced last week, but no one really finishing the job. It's just floating around and trying to get to the quarterback. Yes, Chris Jones looks like he's going to be in good shape with 6 pressures last week, but got to start converting them. And I think that's something that's going to take, in a typical Spags fashion, a little bit of time to come around. I don't know if you're going to see a true front like you've seen the last season this week, but maybe next time these two teams meet.
Next time. I think Bengals fans will like that you put it that way. Next time. Secondary wise, any questions? You guys feeling confident there?
I think you have to feel pretty good about it. You go back and watch the Ravens game. I'm not going to say they blanked the wide receivers, but they did pretty good against them for the most part, outside of Zay Flowers having 4 or 5 catches. And you have Bateman had a big catch later in the game, but he didn't do much else. The tight ends were really the issue, so it's a question of whether or not you can continue to cover and how you're going to do that. But the Bengals have a different offensive philosophy than the Ravens do, obviously. And with Higgins out, that's going to be the big question. I would think that Kansas City should be able to feel pretty good about where they're going to be at in the secondary. I'm really going to be curious to see what the Chiefs' plan is for Jamar Chase, because if it's Jamar Chase without T. Higgins, I think that changes things. Compared to if they were both out there together. I think maybe they're going to look at probably obviously doubling Chase in different scenarios and doing the one-on-ones. And I think from what we saw from Watson last week, I think you have to feel pretty good about where he is as a corner. So it'll be something to watch this week too.
I think that dovetails really nicely into something that I think might be one of the keys to the game for the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's shift our focus, talk about some of those keys that will be important for both sides here to come out of Arrowhead with a victory in week 2.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now they have a chance for you to do exactly what I do every single week. They have something a little bit different for you right now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube base plan account, all you got to do is watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. No problem. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. It is Crossover Thursday, and we're brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our code. It's all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm really interested to see what these keys are, Jake. Let's get it right away for the Bengals. What are the 3 keys here?
So I'll go with a couple. James, you can throw in as well. First, I'm looking at whether Trey Hendrickson and this defensive line can take advantage of those tackles of the Kansas City Chiefs. And like the Chiefs had issues getting Lamar Jackson to the ground last week, the Bengals had issues getting Jacoby Brissett to the ground. Talked about it earlier. Doesn't get easier with Patrick Mahomes. And that interior competition is worlds different, tiers different from the top of the NFL to the bottom of the NFL, comparing the Chiefs to the Patriots. So the task gets harder, but if they're getting pressure and can abuse those tackles, can they get Mahomes to the ground? That's 1 for me. 2 is, Chris, you talked about the ability to get doubles to Jamar Chase with the absence of T. Higgins. And one thing that we saw very successful for the Bengals in week 1 is when they went to 12 personnel featuring rookie Eric All Jr. and veteran Drew Sample, a couple of tight ends more willing and more able to block than the Mike Gesicki and Tanner Hudson duo, 2 of the other tight ends that were active for the Bengals in week 1. I'm interested to see if they get to that 12 personnel package a little bit more than we're used to for an 11 dominant team in the Cincinnati Bengals, and if they're able to use that to their advantage both in the run game and to generate some looks for explosives in the passing game. James, what would you add to that?
Well, yeah, explosives, huge. I mean, that would probably be number 1 if I had to rank them. But the other thing, if it's bringing Patrick Mahomes down, it's also making sure that you tackle Rashid Rice and Isaiah Pacheco, probably not in that order, Pacheco and Rice. I mean, they struggled tackling last week. Such a huge issue. And if you're in these one-on-one situations, I get it. The Chiefs love it if it's Isaiah Pacheco versus a cornerback. But the Bengals have to win those. They just do, especially because the Patriots' interior of their offensive line, much, much different than what they're going to be facing on Sunday at Arrowhead. I mean, that's such a huge edge, I think, in difference between last week and this week is dealing with Smith and Tooney and who am I missing?
Creed.
And Creed Humphrey. Yeah, the guy that I talk about more than anyone, actually, because the Bengals picked Jackson Carman over him, and I still haven't forgiven them. And so, yeah, I think that's such a huge factor because and Jake said it at the beginning, there's a very real possibility where the Chiefs are like, Isaiah, we're going to run for 200 today. And I'm not sure the Bengals are going to be able to do much to stop it. And that's such a key, especially early in this one.
Yeah, I thought the Bengals defensive interior actually held up against the Patriots, and that was what we thought the problem would be. I'm not so convinced that will repeat this week. But on top of that, like you said, James, they got to tackle the yak disparity. You talk about the polar opposites. The Patriots were the best tackling team in the NFL in week 1. The Bengals yak was dismal. And this is a yak league right now. Average depth of target across the league down. The Chiefs, on the other hand, best yak team in the NFL in week 1. Tackling, can't underline that one enough from the Bengals perspective. That's a great shout, James. What about you guys from the Chiefs side of things, or any comments there from any of the keys that we've identified before we get to the Chiefs keys?
I just want to say thank you, James, for your comments on Creed. We appreciate you guys not drafting him and taking Carmen instead. Just want to throw that out there. Sorry.
Come on,
for salt the wounds, but
what's she doing? What?
Our listeners already don't like the Chiefs, man. What
Tooney,
are you doing?
Smith, and Humphrey in the same freaking offseason. I mean, my God.
And all 3 of those guys could have been Bengals. Like, we could be talking about opposites right now.
And at least 2, right? Yeah. Like Smith and Creed, especially Creed. Like Smith, whatever. I don't know the medicals and what they had. But anyways, what are the Chiefs' keys, guys?
I'll echo one of Jake's, and Chris, you can hit the highlights. For me, it's about doing what you didn't do last week. You put rookie Kingsley Suamataia out there on an island and said, go take care of business. Trey Hendrickson is not going to be that guy. I guarantee that. So how do you help him? It's not just about chipping a little bit. I do think they have to run a little bit more 12 personnel, give him a body outside of him so that he can kind of play off of that. But I will say what he lacks in experience, I think he does make up for in arm length and footwork. So I think this is going to be a premier battle. They just got to come up on top of it.
Yeah, one of the biggest things for me is the pressure. Kansas City, and Ryan kind of talked about this earlier, and we've alluded to it a little bit as well, or I alluded to it a little bit as well, but you didn't get Lamar Jackson down. And you got pressure on the quarterback, but you couldn't get him to the ground. You guys had the same problem with Brissett. That's a huge thing for Kansas City. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Joe Burrow, but he's not Lamar Jackson when you're talking about moving around in the pocket and being able to run. And so how much is that going to play into the Chiefs being able to get him down? They've struggled at times with Burrow in the past, so I'm not saying that it's going to be something where they're going to get 6 or 7 sacks, but I do think that that's going to be a huge key in this game is can they actually get him down to the ground? Can they get a couple of sacks and be successful getting the pressure and getting home?
I hear you there. Joe Burrow, when the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs, has been effective in making guys miss. And when the Chiefs have had their win or their most impressive or important win, going back to that AFC championship, it was when Chris Jones was able to finish the play and finish the game. And that certainly is a factor. The Bengals, meanwhile, will have their hands full trying to figure out how to block Chris Jones again. And so that is always one of the marquee matchups that you highlight. And outside of that, there are some strength on weakness mismatches, or also some strength on strength pieces of interest to me, where I thought that in the few instances where the Bengals were challenged in coverage, I thought that their corners actually held up okay. I think it's a bigger test this week with the Chiefs' weapons. Interested to see how this secondary reacts in a game that might see a heavier pass focus from the Kansas City Chiefs as well. So I think we're going to learn a little bit more about both of these teams this week, guys. Excited to see how this one plays out on Sunday. And how about the Chiefs getting 2 AFC North teams out of the way early at home? How about that for the schedule makers, huh? With those extra days of rest, what a gift from the schedule makers, huh?
You say gift. I'm going to say I don't think it was a gift the way we looked at the schedule to start the season.
I'm just saying, if you have to play those teams,
I get what you're saying.
At least you get the rest.
No. I get what you're saying, and I completely agree with you. But when you look at those first 2 weeks, and it's the Ravens and the Bengals, the team you played in the AFC Championship game this past year, and a Bengals team that's always played you tough and had your number more times than not more recently, that doesn't feel like a gift. But I completely agree. The rest is a huge deal. So I think that could play into it as well. And this is not a fun schedule for the Chiefs, but it's the NFL, and it's not ever going to be a fun schedule. So looking forward to this game, though, gentlemen.
For sure. Should be a good one. I look forward to some barbecue and some non-December Kansas City weather. It's supposed to be like 86 on Sunday. Fellas.
Wow.
Like, sign me up. Let's go.
James is all about that.
Yeah, it's all about me and my weather accommodations, of course.
There you go.
That's going to wrap it for us. Hope you guys enjoyed the crossover. Make sure that you like, sub, and hit the bell here on this channel. And check out the other one while you're doing, because we're all free and available 5 days a week. Plus, across the entire Locked On Network. Thanks for joining us today. Go your team, whichever that happens to be. Have a good one, and we'll catch you next time.